Yo, yo, yo. Hey guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show. You ever thought to yourself, it's really hard to be a boss? I'm trying to be nice and I'm trying to be clear, but it's working against me. Well, today we're going to talk about how to be the boss and a nice person at the same time with my partner here, Dr. Barrett Straub, who is our CEO. And transparently, this is one of the hardest things ever. We share our journey and 3 tips to help you be a boss and a nice person at the same time. So make sure you guys check it out. I know you'll enjoy it. We'll see you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
This is our Monday afternoon podcast. And what's really cool is Barrett comes up with great topics that are real challenges for dentists and team members. And today we're going to be talking about one that's going to make me sweat through the whole one.
Me too.
It's how to be the boss and a nice person at the same time.
And is it possible?
I don't know. Is it?
Well, we're still trying to find out.
Yeah.
But yes, I think so.
Okay, so
you can be the boss and be nice at the same time.
Okay, so if you're listening, I'm just going to tell you, I'm 53 years old, 26 years of owning Act Dental. This is the podcast I wish I'd have gotten at 26 years old.
Yeah.
And it would have saved me a lot of stomach lining. So thanks for orchestrating this.
You're welcome. And you and I were just talking before Andy hit record, in that we're very much figuring this out as we go as well.
Right.
We don't have this figured out, and we fail at this all the time.
Right. And I'm going to borrow what Patrick Lencioni says. This is a joke that he uses, but I use it too. I have been clinically diagnosed as a wuss, which means it is very difficult for me to be tough with people. I love people. I want everybody to be happy. And what you learn is that it doesn't always work that way. Mm-hmm. You want to be nice to everybody. You want everybody to get along, and it doesn't go in that direction, and there's learning that happens. And so let's start here.
Yeah.
Why is this such a big deal for dentists? Maybe you can go into the psychological makeup of a dentist.
Right. Well, I'd like to think most of us are really nice people.
Right.
I think that's true. And we're learning as we go. We graduate dental school, we get into a practice, we've become leaders, and we're learning on the job how to lead. And our human desire is to be liked. That's just an innate human desire that we all have. We want to be liked by other people. And so our first assumption is that if I am liked by my team, they will view me as a good leader.
Right.
And the pain point is that's not true. And actually, the desire to be liked pulls you further away from elective leadership.
Why is that?
Because your team isn't looking for you to be nice.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Right. So
yes.
I'll go down the broken road path. I wanted to be liked, and then I realized you have to have like and respect.
Yep.
And I've learned a little bit, and as I'm still learning, like is a byproduct. Mm-hmm. You can start with like, but the real like happens as a result of doing the right thing, being consistent. And let me just bare my soul right away, because that'll be a good way. We're going to turn this into a therapy session.
Love it.
So our coach gave us a series of videos in the last session she had with us, and her name is Jamie, and which is great. I think everybody should have a coach. And one of the videos was a Jim Collins video, and he said the signature of mediocrity is chronic inconsistency. Mm-hmm. I watched it 4 times, mm-hmm. and I thought to myself, that was me. Mm-hmm. And I was chronically inconsistent. I was going with where everyone's emotions were, where I could go today. And what I found is that I made more great people miserable over this process. And so leadership is hard.
Yeah.
We have to learn this. And you can't, I would say leadership is not one of those things you just kind of figure out. There's a combination of learning while you're on the job, but then you also have to have a mentor, somebody who can teach you how to be a boss.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, we all need mentors. We have to see what it's like. And that's a good point. Part of the challenge is that our culture portrays leaders. If you think about movies, you think about like, I don't know if you watch the movie or the show Succession on HBO or Billions. We portray in Hollywood these strong leaders that are really poor leaders. We portray leaders as this autocratic, heavy-handed, rule by fear leadership, and that's so far from the truth.
Right.
However, we have to start thinking as Dennis in leadership. The whole like being liked as a boss is a different mindset than being liked as a friend or an acquaintance.
Right.
Okay. And so once we get that different definition of what it is to be liked as a boss, we can start to be more intentional about the things that will make us a good boss and make us an effective leader. And really, the first concept that we like to say is, what is nice? Being clear. Clear is nice is what our coach Jenny Poulos always says.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Well, and I share the same concept, but it's better to be clear than it is to be nice. And I have 2 dogs. I'll tell you my dog story. Many people heard this. So I took our 2 dogs who were unruly because they were puppies to the dog whisperer.
Okay.
And I remember going, it was very expensive. Mm-hmm. And the first day I thought, when are you going to work with the dogs? And we didn't even work with the dogs. And then I thought to myself, this has nothing to do with the dogs. And she's like, the dogs are not the problem. Right. And she said something like this, those 2 crates, you will point and those dogs will go to the crates. And I was like, yes, whatever. Now, it wasn't about being mean. It wasn't about being heavy-handed. It was about being consistent.
Yes.
Consistent, clear direction. And I have 4 children too, 22, 20, 18. Those are my girls.
Yeah.
And I've learned the hard way. I'm still learning with my son. Clear is way more important than nice. Clear is just, it's very, very kind when you're simple and clear. Here's a challenge for you if you're a leader watching or listening. Say more with fewer words.
Yeah.
Whether it be actions, simple. Sometimes we talk too much. Mm-hmm. And I've learned you just can be clear and respect. Respect is greater than like. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I want to be, as a leader, I've always thought, I don't need to be liked. I'd like it.
Right.
It'd be, that would be beneficial, but we have to start with respect.
Right.
So if my team respects me, I'm great with that. If they also like me, that's a bonus.
Right.
But I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to be respected. And, I think in the workplace, there's an overlap between those 2 words.
Right.
But we talk about clear is nice, but there's another word that comes along with clear, and that's consistency. Mm-hmm. Right. So, we were talking earlier about culture of discipline and about inconsistency, and you were talking about being consistent. So I think consistently clear is the nicest of all.
Right.
Expand on that.
Yeah. Well, and again, if you're thinking in terms of concepts that you can start tomorrow, I'll give you one more bonus tip here. When I read the book Traction, it was an operating system that I could enforce these principles in. They're a set of rules.
Okay.
It's a real regular set of rules that when you stick to them, you can start to employ a lot of these. Let me be really clear about what this means. Let me be really clear about what we're looking to accomplish. Everyone else can see those rules too, and they follow them. So for me, I needed a framework, a system. Even running a team meeting would become unruly if I was trying to run it, only because I would want to start with something funny, and then I would go down a rabbit hole when people would present a problem. And then I learned you don't address problems during a meeting all the time. You learn to plan. One of our first coaches that came in here, he's like, listen, this is a planning session. This is not a solution session. Now you got to do a little bit of both.
Right.
You got to figure that stuff out, and you've got to be able to guide people ultimately in healthy communication. So I like the idea of having some type of rules.
Yeah.
When you have regular rules that everyone can agree on, it's good. I violated the rules because I tolerated bad behavior. I thought core values were, something which we're going to get into in just a second, but like I would tolerate bad behavior, and nothing frustrates a great team member than when you consistently tolerate a bad one. Mm-hmm. That was me. Yeah. I was trying to make everybody happy.
Right.
So,
and it came from a good place. It came from good intent.
Right.
It came from wanting to be a good leader, but what you just said a minute ago really resonated with me. So traction and the methodology of that gave us here at ACT a framework. It gave us direction. It gave us a ending point, an outcome that as long as we stayed focused on that, there's some latitude in how we got there.
Right.
So we call, I've heard people talk about it. Give your team a hallway, not railroad tracks. So railroad tracks, you are only going to go in one direction.
Right.
On a hallway, you're still going to get to the goal. You're still going to go in one direction, but there's some latitude in how you get there. And your team wants that decision making. They want that autonomy. They want that fulfillment in that, hey, we're going to go there, but you're going to help me get there. And the path might deviate just a little bit, but we're going to stay within these guidelines called the walls of the hallway.
Right, because the railroad tracks imply there's a lot of micromanaging.
Yes.
It's got to be exactly the way I want it every single time.
Yes.
And the truth is that doesn't work really well. Mm-hmm. And I'm an eye on the disc profile. Mm-hmm. You're, a DC.
Yep.
So I, like people, I think in terms of pictures and concepts. So me trying to micromanage details just doesn't work. Right. I love the hallway aspect of things.
Yeah, right. And, this concept really has been the foundation of how we coach our pro coaching clients in that instead of saying, hey, here's 82 systems, you've got to do these 82 systems, do them exactly our way, and then go to work.
Right.
That's a railroad. And so we've really taken this philosophy and put it into our own coaching in that we provide our clients a strategic system.
Right.
Hey, we're going to help you decide who you are, core values, where you're going, and we're going to provide the framework, that hallway, that now the dentists can take their teams and walk them through. Here's the direction. I need your help getting there. And to your point, then when things get a little messy, you fall back on the system. You fall back on the method. You fall back on the concepts. And then that disallows us from getting way off of target because human nature is going to take us way off of target unless we have that chance to pull back in, have the system, as you said, to fall back on.
Right. And the system creates the discipline that we're looking for. If you look at any dental practice that's grown and scaled without a considerable addition of stress, they have disciplines in place. Even the biggest DSOs know we've got to have a discipline in how we communicate. How does cash get handled here? You bring in multiple people or other people that are going to be on the leadership team. You got to teach everybody how to communicate. Most teaching has to go up to the top,
right?
Because the leaders screw things up. And this discipline creates a flywheel. Things grow. You feel you can do more without feeling like we're working that much harder. Would you agree?
Yeah, totally. And, to kind of wrap a bow on clear is nice when you have this culture of discipline, as you're talking about. And we talk about, we want to know, we want your team to know what to expect. Meaning, I don't know exactly how the day is going to go. I know there's going to be hurdles. I know there's going to be obstacles, but I know what's going to happen.
Right.
We're going to figure it out. We're going to behave in this way. We're going to use our strategic plan to answer questions and make decisions. And so I don't have the exact picture, but I know how the day is going to go.
Yeah.
And how we're going to treat one another and how we're going to talk and how the doctor is going to, expect me to come with solutions, not just problems. And when you can give that clarity to your team, they're going to help you lead. They're going to help you get to that outcome.
Yeah. You got to leave space for that. We heard it this morning, some teams that grow, they feel like, oh, we got our feet underneath us. We don't have to meet as much anymore. And you are like, warning, warning, warning. It's like saying, my family's great. My wife and I are good. We don't have to go to date night anymore. Right. You have to maintain that alignment at the top, or that's when the wheels come off. Agree?
Yeah, 100%. If you're not talking via weekly team meetings, things are going to go awry. Right. It's the date night analogy. You always use the family eating dinner together.
Right.
As soon as you stop those habits, you're just inviting problems.
Right. And so I don't mind sharing this because that's what we do in the podcast. This morning, our traction team, Chris, pointed out we need to come up with a Labor Day policy because we typically meet on Mondays. Now, just to give you an example, if you're listening, that's a whole week and a half or 2 weeks before we would meet again on certain things just because a holiday interrupted. And I had like some chest pain. I'm like, listen, we have to, at all costs, when we miss a day for a holiday, we got to get back in there and be aligned, because me as a leader, I tell myself stories. I start over functioning. You try to calm me down.
Right. Well, we realized it over Memorial Day. It's like, holy cow, we're not going to meet for 2 weeks as a team. That just doesn't feel right.
Right.
Because we need that rhythm
right.
of checking in, getting clear, answering questions. And so just, clear is nice. Give your team, knowledge of what to expect day to day. Give them boundaries, but give them latitude, and just a culture of consistency, clear, consistent communication.
Yeah. Talk about that. Consistency and knowing what to expect. How important is that for a team member?
It's super important. Your team, each teammate on your team has their own life. They got their own baggage. They got their own stuff going on. And for many people, coming to work is like a release. It's it's where, okay, I know how the day is going to go. I can turn off all the life stresses and I can do what I love to do. And if we are providing a situation where they don't feel safe and they don't know what to expect, then we're just adding stress to their life.
Right.
And they're not going to perform well. And they probably are going to leave eventually.
Right. Remember, if you're a dentist and you're listening, you're a leader, and one of the most safest places in your team members' lives is in your practice. It's predictable.
Yep.
And you can't come to the line of scrimmage and go, Omaha. It freaks them out. It looks good on TV.
Blue 52.
Yeah. Right? It just freaks, it freaks them out. So, the whole concept of clear is nice, create some consistency, have no surprises at work. The less surprises you have, the better.
You got it.
Concept number two, find the right who, and the right people solve lots of challenges. Can you explain that one?
Yeah. And then I'm going to turn it back to you, because you're, you help me see this all the time, in that a lot of our challenges and our problems become easier to overcome with the right people in the right seat. So I, as a dentist and as a detail guy, always am looking for how and what and when. And you always coach me to say it's about a who. Yeah. Let's find the right person.
Right.
So, tell me where you got this idea, and because it has been so transformative for us to find the right people, put them in the right seat, and tell me you've experienced that firsthand. So talk about it.
Okay, so I'm raising teenage girls.
Yeah.
Teenage daughters.
Okay.
It's all about the value system.
Okay.
Don't worry how flashy, how smart somebody is. They all carry this internal value system. Mm-hmm. So I'm experiencing that with daughters, and you have to let them fail, and they got to get their hearts broken. Yeah. And at the end of the day, they're like, oh, I really like this guy. Why do you like him? Well, he's a good human being, and I'm like, okay, no matter what you do. Now, I didn't come up with this. There are other people that have said this better. Most notably, Jim Collins says, if you look in the book, Good to Great, the best companies did not start with what? They started with who. Okay. He makes the point in that book, which was the first time I heard it, and then I had to hear it again, which is typically how I have to hear things. Yeah. In your industry, no matter what industry you're in, you have to figure out who do you want to be working with, because if the industry changes, let's say dentistry completely changes, it just gets weird.
Yeah.
You can survive with the right who's. They are all in on your value system, no matter if the entire industry gets disrupted. Mm-hmm. Dan Sullivan wrote a book from Strategic Coach called, Who Not What.
Who Not What. Okay.
It's a terrible book, but so don't read it.
But the title's awesome.
I love Dan Sullivan. Dan, if you're listening, I'm sorry. It's terrible. But the whole cover of the book tells you the story. Right. The story is this: don't try to figure out what, because when you get the right who, they figure out the what. And I found that to be absolutely true. Now, again, one more thing that you have to think about as a leader, you don't want to do everything.
Right.
What you dream of is a day where you can go to somebody and go, you're my person for this. How you doing? How can I help you? Right. How can I support you? And they go, you go back to doing what you do. I got this.
Right.
And then they come to you, and when they're stuck, and you can add what you add best, which is the vision, sometimes the execution, creative problem solving. What's your experience on who versus what?
Well, when you have the right people around you, just life gets easier. Your kids, your wife, your coworkers. And not only does life get easier, it becomes more enjoyable.
Right.
And so I think we all get the idea of the right people and who, and so much it's been a gut reaction for probably most dentists listening, say he or she's the right person, but tell us why we have that gut reaction. When someone like that's the right person, tell us why, what we've distinguished and figured out over time.
It's values.
Yeah.
Now again, I'm borrowing because that's what we all do, borrow great information. We had a coach come in here and said, you only hire people for two reasons.
Yeah.
Number one, they fit your core values. Number two, they get results. You don't hire them because they've been here for a long time. They're a nice person. They came with the practice. They're your neighbor. You think they might be good. At the end of the day, your favorite team members, they fit your core values. And you've stated them. We have 6 of them here at Act Dental. And I'll go back to what you said. It's core values.
Yeah.
Core values it's one of those phrases that, as time has gone on, people go, oh yeah, that sounds great. What's next? And I'll tell you, there is nothing next. You get really good at core values because that's how your favorite people you'll ever meet in a chair, at work, in your own personal life, they care about the same things you care about. The least favorite people you ever meet, it's not that they're bad people. They just don't care about the same things. And so you got to get your core values right. And then when you get the right core values, I'm telling you guys, the more you lean into core values, the less crazy stuff you ever deal with. And I'll say one more thing. That's not true. I'm going to say a lot more things. You never worry about your great team members. You never think about your great team members. You only think of who? You think of the one that's driving you crazy, and it's hard to go to the gym. It's hard to think. It's hard to focus on a baseball game that your son is playing in, or you're just thinking about the squeaky wheel, and it's not their fault.
Yeah.
It's ours.
When you wake up at 3:30 in the morning and can't get back to sleep, you're not thinking about the team members that share your core values. You're like, to your point, you're thinking and stressing about the one that's driving you crazy, that doesn't fit. He or she doesn't fit, and you're a wuss because you're not letting he or she go.
Right. And, Patrick Lencioni uses this phrase called peer-to-peer accountability. It sounds wonderful.
Right.
And until you go down the path of core values, you don't see it. And then you have people that come to you later on when you're hiring people or whatever, they hold that flag pretty high.
Right.
And say, listen, this person might not fit our values. What you'll do when you find the right, so again, the second concept here is you give up a lot of control and magical things happen. When you get the right person in the right seat, like Peter Dawson said, you can produce twice as much in half the time with a quarter the stress.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
My favorite part about core values is they guide behavior.
Right.
And so when you have core values and you've talked about them with your team and you have them up on the wall and you talk about them, and then you have some behavior that doesn't match, you have a foundation to fall back on.
Right.
You can say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. It doesn't match our previously stated and discussed core values. We need to correct that behavior. Yeah. Without those core values and without that framework, you just look like a bad guy.
Yeah, you do.
And so core values are wonderful, and they're often, to your point, seen as touchy-feely, but they're not. They're tangible. They guide behavior. They tell the team exactly who we are, where we're going, and how I should behave day in and day out. Yeah. Now, one thing you're really good at is reminding us. And so you always say a dentist needs to be a CRO. What does CRO stand for?
Chief Repeating Officer. Right. And again, I didn't come up with that. I borrowed that from somebody. But you do it at home. You say the same thing. And my dad was the Chief Repeating Officer. Just the values thing. Mm-hmm. I have said this a million times. And it's okay to repeat things. Remember, the average adult, it takes 7 times, 7 different ways for them to really understand it. And it's okay to repeat the things that are most important.
And that's the average. So some need to hear it 14 or 21 times.
Well, 18, 19 times on my side of things. But here's what's really cool. When you do the Chief Repeating Officer thing, your values show up not only in just behavior, which is most important, but they also show up in tough decisions. You're going to be presented with difficult decisions. And you can go back to your values and can say, all roads lead home to our values. So I'm going to repeat over and over again who we are, why we do what we do. And it's amazing how people pick that up. Your kids will pick that up. My hope is that I'm going to a grandfather someday. Yes. And I'm sitting at the table and I'm like, wow, look at that. I've heard that one before. So it's okay to be the chief repeating officer, don't you think?
Absolutely.
We like that consistency from the people that lead.
100%. And so we're gonna get, before we leave here today, we're gonna give you some things to take home and use on Monday. I think this is number one. Don't worry about repeating yourself. And actually, when it comes to core values, if you don't have them, identify them. We have tools. If you have identified them, talk about them with your team.
Right.
Put them up on the wall and then repeat them. Meaning you got to talk about them every single week. We talk about in our meetings every week. We identify them. We celebrate one another. We highlight a core value, because if it's on the wall, but you're not talking about it or repeating yourself, they're not living. They're not breathing. They're not part of your culture.
Right. One more thing on values is they're verbs. They're not aspirational things like excellence, integrity. If you have to have a core value of integrity, just don't bother. Seriously, come on. That's like basic to get in the door.
Right.
Your core values should be verbs that make your heart sing. Mm-hmm. Give greater than get is one of my favorite here. Yeah. Like always give the world more than you expect. Always be growing is another one of my favorite. I could take this entire podcast, which I won't, for another 45 minutes and go through why every core value is so important. Because I love CE. I love being better today than we were yesterday. Yes. And so you as a dentist might have those. You've got to bring them alive somehow in simple phrases that are verbs that you say, I love that. That makes my heart sing. And one more thing on the values thing, when you're talking about values every day, it's bigger than talking about processes. Remember, I told you to set up the tray this way and we're supposed to go this direction. And remember, I want it counterclockwise and parallel. And that just gets old after a while.
Right.
When you're with somebody who's...
I like that dentist voice.
You like that? Dentist voice?
Easily.
I'm going to combine a whole bunch of different concepts. Great leaders speak to people's hearts.
Yeah, I love it. Great
managers speak to people's heads. So that's where the values comes into play. You can be a great leader, but listen, that's not the direction we're going.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Okay, so some take-home leadership tools that the listeners can start using on Monday. We talked about chief repeating officer. Next one we have here is don't give orders, ask questions.
That's a hard one.
I know. You're good at it, though. So
do you think so?
I do.
I need a lot of work on that. I'm trying to be better on that's a daily walk for me because I have assumptions, I have stories, and I want to be better about that. And I agree. When you start with a question, you certainly start to employ that entire concept that Stephen Covey said, seek first to understand before being understood. Now, everyone would agree that's a great thought, but how?
Right. So, and I think it goes back to the hallway versus railroad. And by asking questions, you are teaching your team member to become their own thinker, their own leader. And you can kind of co-diagnose with them the best solution to a problem versus just saying, do this, do this, do it this way.
Right.
You can provide some guidance and hey, my goal is for us to get here, but help me design the path to get there.
Right.
And now you're teaching skills that this person and this team can leverage for a long time.
Right. You're also transitioning the thought process in the brain. And you teach this in TTT. When you ask somebody a question, their whole entire brain chemistry changes. What happens?
Yeah. When you ask open-ended questions, we force ourselves into the frontal cortex, and the frontal cortex is the region of the brain that deals with logic and reasoning. And so when we're in our practice and we're trying to solve problems, we have to be thinking rationally. If we're in our emotional rear brain, it's going to be harder. Emotion and logic don't go together. There are two different brain centers. You can't use both of them at the same time. And so questions are a great way to get someone to think rationally and logically.
Yeah. Now, another take home that we're going to ask people to do, if you're listening, triangulation. Now, triangulation is one of the killers in any organization, any family. Triangulation is when somebody comes to you with a problem about somebody else.
Yes.
And you embrace it and you go, thank you for this problem. Let me solve the problem.
Yes.
And I'm going to go to the person that you're attacking.
Yes.
And I'm going to rescue everyone. And you're thinking you're going to do something good, but what ultimately happens?
You become a bad guy.
How? Yeah. I'm trying to help.
I know. Right. And I experienced this early in my career. And I didn't even really realize what happened until I got into coaching with you, and I actually was listening to you in triangulation. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what happened. And I remember it like it was yesterday. Same thing. There's a victim.
Yeah.
The triangle is there's a victim, there's a persecutor, and there's the boss or the enabler, the savior, if you will. And so the victim comes to the savior and says, so-and-so is really bugging me because he or she did this, and I need you to fix it.
Right.
And you as a boss, like, I got this. I can fix this like in 30 seconds. So I pound my feet upstairs, I climb up, and I'm going to fix this problem, and I fixed it.
Yeah.
And then the outcome was both of them didn't like me. Both were mad at me. Both of them had tears in their eyes. I'm like, well, that didn't work well. Yeah. Not only did I not fix the problem, but now I have two people mad at me and upset with me. And so you talk about don't connect the triangle. And so kind of overlapping is this new thought process that our coach, Jamie, gave us is make the easy path the hard path.
I'm going to explain that in a minute, but I got to piggyback on your train wreck with a bigger train wreck. Okay. Because I think if you're listening, you've been in these situations. You're trying to be a good person. You get this problem. And then what I did is I would go to the other person, but not really tell them the whole truth and go, hey, you're doing a great job. And, one of the things we might be able, I'm just sugarcoating the whole thing, which fuels one emotions person. And then if you've ever been in this situation, this is the worst position to ever be in, when you're texting both of them at night after work. Let me text her. No, let me call. Oh, shoot, I got to call her. And I tell my wife, I got to go outside. I know we're eating dinner, but I just got to call this team member. She's upset, and then you call the team member. And now I'm outside on the sidewalk outside the restaurant window. Yeah. While this team member's crying in one ear and my wife is looking at me with that 1,000-yard stare that's burning a hole through me like, hey, why don't you just talk on the phone while I raise our children? And I'm doing the whole hand, honey, I got to take this call right now. So, and it doesn't get better. No. And what you're doing, if you're having conversations after work, that's unhealthy. Mm-hmm. Just know that. Those things should be addressed in real time. And I'm saying this as a recovering person who just employed all that. It's just not healthy. And you do need a coach to help you pull out of the mud, because this isn't something I would have figured out. And to your point, Jamie, our coach, she taught us this one. I brought this to her. Mm-hmm. And the truth of it is that I was still doing some triangulation in the business. And there were other aspects of it going on. And she said, you have to make the easy path the hard path. And what she explained was the easy path is for me to go and complain. Mm-hmm. You got to turn that around. Given two choices, people will always pick the easy path. And what you have to do is you got to draw a line through that and go, that's the hard path. And here's how you're going to do it. So write this down if you're listening. Are you going to tell them, or am I? Right. It's a moment of truth. And it pauses what's going on here to say, you have to take this to the other person. Yes. Did I teach it right? That's perfect. And so when we talk about triangulation, when we have dentists in this room here in Milwaukee, everyone nods their head, because every dentist knows exactly what this situation is. Right. And the person is coming to you as a dentist only because they have been taught to know that you're going to take care of it. You're going to take their problem off of their shoulder and put it on yours and take care of it. So that's easy. I'm going to go dump my problem on you. But if I, as your team member, know if I go to Kirk with a problem, I know he's going to ask me to deal with it. He might coach me, but I'm going to have to solve this. Now it becomes harder. Mm-hmm. And that's okay, because then I know when I go to you, I might say, Kirk, I need to deal with this problem on my own, but I need some coaching. That's what you as a leader want, instead of, hey, Kirk, solve this for me. Right. You can also embrace conflict that can be very intense, knowing we're going to be okay. People will still bring you problems. You go, wow, this is a big one. Okay. Thank you. And are you going to tell them, or I? Yeah. I'm going to completely support our values, where we're headed. It's an awesome thing. You got to, and like everything, this is a practice. You got to try it once and go, wow, that worked. Right. And you'll still screw up. Yes. And so don't expect perfect. We're all learning together here. So let's put some final takeaways on this. Here's the bottom line. You can be a boss and a nice person at the same time. Your goal should not to be, you shouldn't try to be nice. just be clear first. Now, I'm not telling you to be mean.
No.
But the more clear you can be, people will enjoy that. They'll think well of you.
We're going to pull some cards out here.
Oh, yeah. So I got notes all over the place. So, being a boss means giving your team fulfillment in their jobs. Explain that one.
Yeah, we want to grow leaders, right? So if we grow leaders, if we give our teams skills to solve their own problems, to think outside the box, to have trust, then our job gets a lot easier. And we've made them better people.
Right.
And they're going to, in turn, help us be better people. We also want to provide fulfillment. So everyone wants to go to a job where they have purpose, where they have autonomy, where they have trust, where they can be themselves, when they know they can screw up and it's not going to be held against them. And that only comes from clarity, from knowing what to expect, from building core values. And that our point is, this is what people are looking for.
Right.
They don't want you to be nice.
Right.
They want you to just tell them how you want it done. Give them some autonomy to help you get there, and they're going to love their job.
Right. And for another podcast, what this is going to set you up for is how to create other leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who said this, but they said it brilliantly. And I've heard it many times, and I had somebody say it directly to me. You're not really a leader until you create other leaders that create other leaders. That's a real leader. And when you really grab what that means, it means you're modeling a communication. You're being consistent. You're going to teach other people how to communicate in a healthy way, which means they'll teach other people. It's going to free up your time. You'll look back and go, wow, we've created something healthy, special, and all I had to do was be clear.
You got it.
Good stuff. Cool. Any last thoughts?
No.
Awesome.
I thought it was a very valuable podcast topic in that we all deal with this, and it's super hard. And so kind of the take-home message is just get started.
Yeah. Repeat
your core values. Don't give orders, ask questions, and don't connect the triangle.
Right.
Ask the question, are you going to tell her or am I?
Yeah.
Just do those 3 things, try it. You'll fumble through it, you'll make mistakes, but you're going to get better. You will get better. And that's what being a human being is all about. If you're better today than you were yesterday, everything's getting out better around you. So good stuff. Thanks for being, this is always enlightening. I feel like I get my own personal therapy session. Me too. It's like co-therapy. So stick around while I say goodbye to everybody else. But thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show. Hey, leadership is not easy. It's hard. And our hope is that this information keeps showing up. This podcast is called the Best Practices Show. Our job for the rest of our careers is to bring you the best information to help you become better so the people around you get better. So I hope this was helpful for you today. If you still need some help, reach out to us. You can join us for our To the Top Study Club, where you're going to be surrounded by other leaders that actually practice this stuff. But keep showing up, keep sending us your challenges. And until we see you guys next time, or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.